from an Islamic extremist. And we'll keep you posted on the funeral, the procession, and the burial here live at Hot News Talk Radio.
800-393-6272. That's 800-393-6272.
In a union of health insurance giants, Anthem's going to buy Cigna for $48 billion, creating a company with 53 million American patients. An auto company's issued a voluntary recall after a breach was revealed this week. WWJ reporter Jeff Gilbert is in Detroit.
This comes after a couple of hackers recently demonstrated the ability to take control of certain Jeep vehicles. Fiat Chrysler had already issued a software patch. Now they're upgrading this, and they're actually going to recall all of the vehicles and get them repaired. Fiat Chrysler says there has not been a demonstrated incidence of hacking into a car in the real world.
Well, for years, Hulk Hogan and the WWE have gone hand in hand. Now World Wrestling Entertainment says it's ended its contract with the iconic wrestler without a clear reason why. Reports indicate it may be because of the emergence of an interview in which Hogan uses the N-word. Steve Kathan, CBS News.
Hi, folks. Alan Thicke here. You know, some things in life are just too serious to take.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Toulis.
As we speak, the funeral service for David Wyatt, the staff sergeant in the Marines, is beginning at Hickson United Methodist Church, an event that will go for well past an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 45 minutes, with the memorials, maybe a sermon, and many other things touching on the nature of man's fall and redemption in the Lord Jesus Christ, and the goodness of God to all men, and the grant he gives to soldiers, to families, to children, to wives. And then also in his sovereign decree, he brings death. And a Thursday, a week ago and a day, he brought death to David Wyatt, the Marine, in the paramilitary attack against the federal installation along the riverfront here in Chattanooga, along Amnicola Highway, next to Chattanooga State Technical Community College. That's the old name. My name is David Toulis, and our show is Nooganomics.com. There is an outpouring of sympathy and even grief among thousands of people here in Chattanooga. They are taken up. We are taken up in the emotion of his death. There are other men who are being buried in the next day or two, according to a roundup in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press on page A4. The story tells of others are being put to rest. Carlson Holmquist, for example, is going to be buried Saturday in Wisconsin, and Corporal Skip Wells will be buried on the Lord's Day in Woodstock, Georgia, at First Presbyterian, at a funeral event held at First Baptist Church in that town. Thomas Sullivan, a gunnery sergeant, is going into Yankee Land and will be buried Monday in his hometown in Springfield, Massachusetts. And then finally, there's a petty officer of second class, Randall Smith, and he's going to be buried Tuesday with an event held at Heritage Funeral Home in Fort Oglethorpe in Georgia. And then he's going to be buried here at the Chattanooga National Cemetery. And the momentary disruption in local economy and marketplace, you could say, here in Chattanooga will come in the disruption of routine traffic, as we are here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, keeping you abreast. The details have been well published early this morning in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. Of course, I'm holding up the printed copy. That is how I like to read my news. If I can have it in print, I will. And so I get eagerly in the red box at the bottom of my driveway, the Chattanooga Times-Free Press print edition. Of course, it's online, and I look at it there as well. And also, the TV stations and Chattanoogan.com have posted the details of the funeral and then the procession. And even since there is such a huge crowd means and details of getting to the National Cemetery because there'll be a difficult time getting into that place. As Confederate Mike was just reporting a moment ago out in Hickson, there are maybe a couple thousand motorcyclists who are in various clubs that are descending in Chattanooga to commemorate the death of this Marine. He's not a soldier. He is a Marine. I was expressing the difference between the two with my mother this morning, whose grandson, my son, is a Marine recruit, recovering in a medical unit from a very serious injury and an accident. And no, Marines are not soldiers. They are not Army. They are military men. They are soldiers in the generic sense, but they are not the Army. And I think they would say that they're not soldiers because they serve the Navy. They are the ground branch, you might say, of the U.S. Navy. My name is David Toulis, and our show is Nuganomics.com. We cover local economy and the free market under the whimsical and very wonderfully weak theory that near is better than far, that small is better than big, simple is better than complex, physical than corporate, and physical is better than abstract, I should say, and personal is better than corporate. Our show is moving to the mornings in God's providence. Next week at 9 o'clock, we'll be here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, online at the station name with a .com slapped onto the end of it. And on your smartphone, you can hear us wherever you might be. Just have the TuneIn radio app and type in Hot News Talk Radio. That's our station, the station that could. And there we are. And on YouTube, you can check out for yourself whether my bow tie is in good order or not. I think it's a bit florid and a bit overstated this morning, though the colors match, despite Jeanette not having been about this morning to pass on my selection and my tying of it. Our show is Nuganomics.com, and as I say, there are funeral details that we've mentioned, and they're online. So if you're about, let me just say briefly that Hickson Pike will be blocked at not Hickson Pike, excuse me, Highway 153 will be blocked to allow for a lengthy procession that could last as long as 30 minutes. From the church to the National Cemetery, and that will start at about 2:45. That's here in Hickson. So you're in Hickson. Your plans of travel need to account for this change. The paper has details about other closings, which are, for example, Old Hickson Pike between Gad and Wilbanks will be closed until 4. Detours posted, and then here Highway 53 south between Hickson Pike and Amnicola. That will be shut down from 2:45 for about 40 minutes. And then further into town, near the Grand Hill there, where the Federal and Confederate dead are laid, South Holtzclaw Avenue between Bailey and East 13th Street will be closed from now. It's just now closed until 5 o'clock, and detours will be posted. Now there is a question, and the question has been brought to us not by interlopers, not by critics, not by skeptics, by demonstrators, protesters, and others, but by Mayor Andy Burke. Mayor Andy Burke has, as of yesterday, signed a mayoral directive number 201501. I guess that's this year, his first mayoral directive. He has authority to issue these orders. They're like presidential executive orders. The mayor is in the executive branch of city government, and he executes things, right? If you're in the executive, you execute things, you make things happen. And what he is proposing is an unconstitutional movement, an unconstitutional barrier to the free expression of people who have something to say that, as he says, that might be quote offensive to the sensibilities of an ordinary person in the state. Now, what does that mean exactly? The reason this edict is unconstitutional is that it's vague. It is vague, and we have to ask ourselves: did David Wyatt give his life for his country in uniform to protect such law as that. We do, after all, live under the rule of law. But we have to ask ourselves, what law did David Wyatt die for? He died in his oath. He was willing to die to uphold the U.S. Constitution. He was not. We have to ask ourselves: was he willing to die for executive edicts of the kind made mention of in mayoral directive number 201501? And the mayor says that a national tragedy has taken place. He reminds us of that in his letter. It's one page. And he wants that family members and others who mourn our fallen heroes, as he says, be able to honor them in a respectful and peaceable manner. And he directs that all City of Chattanooga law enforcement personnel treat Lee Highway and Amnicola Highway, the two sites where the shootings took place, as, quote, protected memorial services, which will shield them from any protest. So he's trying to shield people in these places from protesters. He wants to, quote, protect mourners, and then he directs his agencies to, quote, defend these mourners by enforcing the laws and policies as described herein. Now, this is of course a flimsy and unconstitutional nullity if one wishes to challenge it by saying something adverse in the doleful and mournful proceedings taking place here in Hickson as we speak, or even after, as the body of mourners, respectful mourners for David Wyatt, go in a lengthy procession to the National Cemetery. He points out in what he calls a summary of law, Mayor Burke does, that the General Assembly has determined that picketing, protesting, and demonstrating at a funeral or memorial service within 500 feet of a funeral or burial, funeral home viewing of a deceased person or funeral procession, or a funeral or memorial service for a deceased person shall be deemed offensive to the sensibilities of an ordinary person in the state. Now, this doesn't mention that the deceased is a military man. It just says that it can't be done. Well, that statute, if it's he doesn't cite the statute. Well, actually, he does. Actually, it's 39-17-317 in the Tennessee Code. But the question is, what is interfering, and what is demonstrating, what is protesting, and how can anyone know what the sensibilities of an ordinary person are in the state? Because that definition is left to the discretion of the state actor, the police officer. It is unconstitutionally vague. Now, here's what I'm asking you about. I'm asking you this question: do we members of the public need to be sheathed like? Well, as if there were a police prophylactic, right? A police condom around the body politic to keep out those that are deemed to be burrs or grains of sand, perhaps, on the public mind on this sad day. What if someone has a poster or a billboard that says Allah Akbar, which means something to the effect that God is great? What if someone attends this event or flies in the event or in the procession an upside down federal flag? What about that? Is that a protest that is offensive to the sensibilities of the people taking part? What about the man in the black pickup truck that I saw coming into Hickson this morning? Just in front of me, he made a right turn on Highway 153 up going over to Red Bank. And as he made that turn, on his left, immediately on his left, was a red pickup flying a federal flag, the American flag with the 50 pentacles and the white and red stars. What about that man? Is he causing an offense? If he somehow is there near the protest along the way, what about people who are standing along the way of the procession? What can they say? What can they do? Are they all supposed to bow to Mayor Burke's directive? Are they all facing arrest? Well, if an act is unconstitutional and a nullity, then the enforcer of that act is, in fact, taking personal responsibility upon his own personal self, on his personal shoulders in the enforcement of that act. Every officer who swears to uphold the Constitution, state or federal, needs to understand that he has to uphold it personally. And if he attacks someone and then abuses someone, as police are wont to do, lately, then that is an act that comes upon him personally. What about a man who's flying the flag of Saudi Arabia? What is the flag of Saudi Arabia? Well, Saudi Arabia is a federal ally, receives millions and millions of federal dollars, and yet is involved in grisly slaughters of Christians, persecutions of dissenters, and a promoter of its own sort of Muslim thinking, Wahhabism. And Saudi Arabia, with its billionaire sheiks, is in fact promoting the Islamification of the United States. What about the Tea Party banner? Don't tread on me. Is that upsetting to the families? How is a police officer to know that that's not offensive? How is he to know that a poster that says "God judges enemies" is that for David Wyatt, or is that against David Wyatt? How is anybody to know? What about the statement that on a billboard held up by a teenager, or maybe two teenagers? It's so big. God judges gays. Now that's not exactly touching on this case. It's not going as far as the Westboro Baptist Church out of Topeka, Kansas goes. Their posters say God hates fags, God loves dead soldiers, and God is judging our country. They connect the dead man and his military service with judgment of God upon the nation. What if one doesn't go quite that far? What if someone has a placard that says, "Did Marines die in vain?" What if someone simply asks a question? Is that something that makes that person subject to arrest? Mayor Burke, this directive is going to cause misery for someone today. What about someone who has a billboard that says, "End the occupation in the Mideast"? Is that for David Wyatt and his family, or is that against? Why is it that a funeral is somehow to be insulated from the skeptic? Why is the dissenter not just not invited? He's told, don't come here, don't take part in this movement of the city, this grave and sad event in the city. Why is he told that he can not have a billboard or a notice that says "Fighting terrorism since 1861"? Now that poster is a reference to the South, to the Confederacy, and it often appears with the Southern Confederacy's battle banner in the background, and it says "Fighting terrorism since 1861" because that's what the South did. It fought a terroristic abuse of the Constitution, and an effort to upend constitutional government by creating a unitary, monolithic, centralized state, which is not how we began at all. We began as a compact of the states. So that point about the 1861 and the terrorism is a point against the federal power. Does that somehow offend the family of David Wyatt, whose members are, as we speak now, hearing the opening lines of a worship service, funeral service at Hickson United Methodist Church here in Hickson? What about a billboard that says "Go Marines, kill the turban heads"? Okay, that one's going to get a pass. Now, why does a police officer let that billboard draped along the side of an old sedan? Why does he let that one go? But one that says "Join the KKK, defend America." Why does that not go? Why does that billboard not fly? Why does the man holding that placard get arrested? The ordinance, this directive, this executive order, if you will, by Andy Burke, the mayor of Chattanooga, is on its face unconstitutional. It cannot be enforced. But he says, well, we're basing this on USC, United States Code Section 38, that also has not been challenged. It hasn't been challenged that I know of. It has not been overturned. And he's basing his argument, his directive, on the Tennessee Code. But these are simply too vague to be enforceable, and yet he plans to enforce it. And he has notified the police chief here in Chattanooga, Fred Fletcher, of his order. And Fred Fletcher, who's a very patriotic man and is very much involved in this whole thing on the side of the family and against the Muslims, is going to be enforcing it with all of his officers on the ground. What is neutral? What can something be neutral in this? How does one know what is offensive? What did David Wyatt what was he willing to die for? He was willing to die to uphold the Constitution and defend his country. And he, as he saw it, no doubt, to defend the freedoms and the liberties of the federal government and the people who live under its protection. Well, the Rotarians are all behind the day's moment, holding up in a photograph in the newspaper posters that say Chattanooga Strong, and we have to understand that there is a right of protest, and we don't need to have an Andy Burkean condom placed over the public discourse. We do not have to be protected. We do not need a blue prophylactic on the life-giving force that is debate, that is dissent, that is argument. Why, if we live in a so-called democracy, can people not be allowed, or are people not allowed to argue over anything and to have a diverse viewpoint? Is there not, in the hubbub of debate, in the hubbub of protest, are there not things that we have to think about? Is not the family better served by seeing what the Westboro Baptist Church people have to say? They are very strong dissenters of the status quo, and they are a religious organization. They are exercising free speech, and Congress shall make no law against the free practice of any religious conviction. Freedom of expression cannot be confined. It cannot be categorized. It cannot be doled out. There's no censor that's available to control it, and we don't want a censor. And yet Mayor Burke, celebrating the day, and not of course the death of this military man, but celebrating what he stood for, and being fully part of the agony of the city in this day, is doing something which is unjust. It's unjust because it will bring peril, agony, distress, and cost to the man who has the other opinion, the man who has a minority report. Dissenters enliven the public mind. Okay, they cannot be made illegal. You cannot make illegal demonstrators. You can't think about these demonstrations and what these demonstrators and what they're saying. Maybe what they're saying just are inanities. Maybe they are nothings, and maybe claims about God's judgment by the Westboro Baptist Church is seen as nothing. But we have to understand that the man flying the Confederate flag is as vulnerable to harassment as they are. This is David Toulis.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. We are live covering the funeral and burial of Sergeant David Wyatt, who was slaughtered in cold blood last Thursday by a radical Muslim Islamic terrorist right here in Chattanooga. The community has come together, well over 1,000 bikers lining the roads, hundreds and hundreds of people lining the roads, hundreds in attendance for the funeral and then the burial of Sergeant David Wyatt, an American hero, a Marine, as David Toulis said, part of the Navy, not a standing army, and a constitutional lawful organization. You know, there's a doctrine of fighting words, whereby if you insult someone, you have the right to punch them out or do whatever's necessary to regain your respect, to regain your honor. In the 1800s, men would duel if you disrespected them. So where does freedom of speech end? What was meant under the First Amendment? David Toulis is analyzing that. If someone insults you, do you have a right to hit them? Do you have a right to ask them out to a duel? Or does the First Amendment protect every speech? Does it protect pornography? Can you put pictures of naked men and women engaged in sex on a poster anywhere? Is that speech protected? These are issues that David is analyzing today because Westboro Baptist Church threatened to engage in activities that we consider to be vulgar during the funeral today. We are live covering the funeral and the burial of Sergeant David Wyatt. Hot News Talk Radio.
Nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Soddy Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Soddy, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
When my brother and I opened our first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. We're learning more about the night at the movies, which turned to terror for some people in Louisiana.
A whole group of people, teenagers mainly, running out, telling everybody to run for their life.
2 women shot and killed by gunman John Russell Hauser, who then killed himself.
We're learning from court documents that evidently Hauser's wife had his guns removed from their house back in 2008 due to his mental state. Also, that same year, she got a protective order against him because she said that he had a history of mental issues and also had some violent interactions with their family.
Fox's Will Carr outside the Movieplex in Lafayette. The sentencing hearing for Colorado theater shooter James Holmes canceled for the day because a juror is ill, and Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox says the government is opening a price gouging investigation involving airlines that allegedly raised fares in the Northeast after an Amtrak crash disrupted service. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Toulis.
The Constitution has been suspended over Chattanooga during the day's events. There are no protests allowed of procession where Sergeant David Wyatt will be passing through Chattanooga to National Cemetery this afternoon starting at about 2:45. Roads will be blocked. Highway 153 will be shut down between, just south of Hickson. My name is David Toulis. Our show is Nooganomics.com. We are members of Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Find out more by calling Jürgen Mutz at 877-2202, 877-2202. Smarter way to barter and to improve your cash flow. Also wanted to mention that if you want to have a plan B in business and have some means of support as the economic meltdown approaches, contact Bruce Krebs at Entrepreneur Source, 875-561. That's 875-5621. The name is David Toulis. We cover local economy and the free market here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. There's something of great interest to me, and that is how Tennessee has for at least 20 years labored, and its travelers and people have tried to live under a statute called the Asset Forfeiture Statute in the Tennessee Code. We have on the phone an attorney in Nashville, Joey Fuson, who has several cases that touch on this important question in Nashville. Joey, welcome to Nooganomics.com.
Hey, thanks for having me, David.
All right, you're an attorney. You've been practicing law 9 years. You're 37 years old. And tell my listener what the danger is to him from the asset forfeiture statutes. What does he have a stake in those laws, and how are they set to bite him?
Yeah, and it's a great question. I think it's a great issue. Let me tell you, I think the first most important issue is you don't have to be charged with a crime to have your personal property seized by the government. And I think that a lot of people have the misconception that the only way the government can come take my stuff is if I've committed a crime, and that's just not the case. And Tennessee's laws are as bad as anybody's in the state or in the country.
Well, all right, what is the authority that the state has against my listener, potentially?
Sure, and the authority is this: in Tennessee, the laws say under civil forfeiture that a police officer can seize your personal property, typically vehicles, cash, personal property items, and can do so simply by a hunch or a suspicion that they come up with that they believe it's being used in some type of illegal way, whether it be to whether the money itself is contraband, and a lot of times they'll confirm that with a canine sniff. But most of the time, they just simply take the property, and the burden shifts to you as the property owner to prove your innocence, which is completely contrary to what our Constitution and what our laws should say.
And where does that take? What kind of venue does that take place in?
Sure, there's a couple different ways. Typically, what you'll see, the average case involves the Tennessee Department of Safety. And what the Tennessee Department of Safety will do, they receive the claims from the local law enforcement, and they're the ones who process those claims. You can actually go on their website and find a full question and answer session of what happens when my property is taken. And the Department of Safety has rules in place that are upheld by our state laws and our state courts that basically allow them to go through steps to give you notice that your property has been taken, and then a series of events take place and a series of deadlines occur. And that's usually when I get involved, as after somebody's property has been taken.
Now, my listener, if he's waylaid, hijacked on the side of the highway, needs to know something about the ticking of the clock. What does he need to do on his own, at least initially, if his assets have been stolen by either a highway patrolman, a county sheriff, or a corporation police department officer? Let's say on the way to Nashville.
That's a good point, Dave. It can be from a number of different entities. In fact, you'll even see people that have DEA badges on, which means they're usually a part of a DEA task force. So yes, if any of those different entities take your items, they will give you a sheet of paper, and that sheet of paper just simply gives the information of the seizing agency, has your information almost like a citation. It looks like a ticket, and on that ticket it will tell you that you're going to receive notice from the Department of Safety in the coming months or weeks. The local agency has 5 days to get in front of their local magistrate and get a warrant that's signed by a magistrate. Some of the problems with our laws is that you, as at this point, a defendant or a respondent, have no right to be a part of those. There's no due process in that step. After that happens, you will receive another letter in the mail, and with it, it'll have a list of deadlines, a pauper's oath, which is something you can fill out to say you want to file a claim, and then there'll be a petition in there that you'll fill out saying, I want my stuff back. And at that point, once you receive that notice, you have 30 days to file a claim with the Department of Safety.
So that notice and the ticking of the clock starts when you receive in the mail the notice, and that they get your address because they've clearly looked at your driver's license and recorded the encounter through your license.
That's right. And a lot of people call me initially when they receive the ticket or the initial piece of paper and say, what do I need to do? Well, the clock luckily hasn't started ticking yet. Now, with that gap, with you not receiving that notice right then as the property owner, sometimes problems occur. If you're driving somebody else's vehicle, if your driver's license has the improper address, you can see how there could be a problem when there's a delay, and then all of a sudden it gets sent to your old apartment. It was on your driver's license. You never get notice. That 30 days lapses, and the Tennessee has collected their goods, has collected their bounty.
I read a story on the Washington Post about some poor young man, a black man who was on a train, and he was searched on an Amtrak train. He was searched by DEA agents who noticed that he was paying cash for his he paid cash for his ticket, and he looked suspicious, and so he granted a search of his possessions in the train. The agents seized $13,000 or $12,000, and now the story is in the Washington Post that there are about 10 agencies all filing claims for a part of that money. That seems very, very money-centric and very grubby somehow. What about in Tennessee, Joey Fuson?
Yeah, I have not seen, typically, I haven't seen that happen. I would imagine there's probably more information they have about this gentleman and maybe where that money did come from that would give them a basis to maybe jump in and claim their stake. But usually only have two situations that I see here in Middle Tennessee. Is one is where it goes straight through the local agency. They remain involved, meaning they're the witnesses that come. The local district attorney's office here in Tennessee will get involved. And they keep all the money, 100% of the profits, which is part of the reason why the laws are so bad in Tennessee is they get to keep all this money. But the other way you'll see them is when they get the federal government involved. They can actually call in the federal government, which began happening, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, where they would call them in. They turn the money over to the federal government and they do a profit sharing, basically. And I forget what the profit sharing is, but I want to say it's something like 60-40, 80-20. There's some breakdown where the local government gets to keep more than the federal government, but they don't have to deal with the Department of Safety and maybe some of the restraints and the time that comes with the local people doing it.
All right. In some instances, my listener has a burden of proof stacked against him, and you mentioned it earlier. The burden of proof in a criminal case is, of course, beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof in a civil case is preponderance of evidence, which means 51%. In your favor, you win. Now, in the civil asset forfeiture, Joey Fuson, the Nashville attorney, that doesn't even come into play because you're having to prove innocence. You're not accused. You're just fighting to get back something that's yours, and you have to somehow show. You have to prove a negative, effectively. Talk a little bit about.
It's exactly
that.
right. I use it sometimes in jury selection. Prove you don't know my number. It's exactly right. And our Constitution is founded on when the government gets involved, placing this burden on the government. And in criminal cases, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. In this situation, they kind of break it down into a couple different steps. And the first steps that occur involve you as the property owner having to do what's called a standing hearing, which means you have to, what you're saying, you have to come show that the money's yours, that the car was yours, that the TV and the Xbox they took out of your house were yours. And sometimes that can be difficult. Now, a lot of times it's not difficult. If you've bought a car, you come and show where you financed the vehicle, and the standing hearing becomes more of a just something easy. But when they take $20,000 of your cash, sometimes it's harder to show unless you've made photocopies of the bills and to show
no one's done
money
that
you've got in your hand is actually yours and not from some illegal method or means, which is the burden. That's the burden's on you. And until you can accomplish or overcome that burden, it doesn't even go back to the state to come and show that there was something illegal, or it was being used, or it was obtained through illegal means or related to some drug activity.
Now, the civil and criminal asset forfeiture scheme, if you will, a kind of skimming scheme, originates in the drug war. Joey Fuson, is that right?
That's correct, and they really do a good job. There's something done by the Institute of Justice called policing for profit. And it's exactly what it is. And it's a way for them to try to make money to fund their organization. And it's exactly what it is.
Well, okay. So now my listener's thinking, okay, I'm driving to Nashville, and I know if I pass through Rutherford County, there's a lot of nefarious doings in that county from the county sheriff, according to YouTube posts and other reports. I'm in danger there. What are some things my listener needs to know when he's traveling? And maybe he does have cash. Maybe he's going to an auction, and he's going to be buying sets of antiques, perhaps, or maybe farm equipment, and he wants to pay in cash. He has, let's say, $25,000 in hundreds and fifties in a knapsack or in a briefcase. What does he need to know about being stopped? Talk about the risks of engaging in conversation with the officer.
Yeah, and I think that people who are going to travel with that much cash are at risk because these laws are so bad. And I think the person that needs to, who's driving, there needs to be a handful of things that they think about ahead of time. They have to protect what they're doing. Now, as far as how they travel, I think that if somebody's going to be going, for example, to purchase something off eBay, or maybe is just simply transporting cash they've been saving up over years, whatever the case may be, I would say a good way to do that would be to try to provide or try to put that cash in some type of safekeeping in the vehicle, along with whatever documentation you have for what kind of vehicle you're going to purchase. I think having loose cash in the console maybe is not the best thing. You may want to put it in a briefcase and have it in the trunk.
So
I think traveling with it that way just provides more security for it. There's more that has to happen for them ever to get to that trunk. As it relates to how they communicate with the police officers, your listener who is driving his vehicle and doing absolutely nothing wrong, I believe is going to have greater latitude to invoke their rights, right? They're going to be more willing and able to do that. And I think it first comes with your communication with the police officer. You've got to make sure that you're respectful, and I say respectful but firm. Police officer comes up and asks you what you're doing. You don't have to answer, but a short, brief answer would probably be the best thing to do. Again, knowing your rights, being aware. Don't always have to invoke them at every turn. You see the guys with the cell phone videos and they're saying, "Am I under arrest?" right when the officer's walking to the window. And that usually causes problems, like it or not. Sometimes invoking all your rights is not the best practice, but I would say be respectful but firm. I would say provide the necessary information you have that information available. It's the same advice I give to people who are driving, maybe after a couple drinks or even have some pot in the car. They need to have all their information ready, have it in an envelope where you can hand to the officer your registration, your insurance, your driver's license. Don't be chatty. Just sit there and be respectful and wait for him to tell you exactly what he's doing. And then let the law work for you. The laws are there, as hard as it may seem, to support people when police officers overstep their bounds.
Well, you're aware of the Sandra Bland death and the terrific interview she gave along the side of the road to a Texas Highway Patrol officer. She resisted the importunities of the officer to talk with her, and she was very chatty. She was kind of a belligerent claimant in person who didn't really express herself in legal language and legal terms. But what are my listeners' rights vis-a-vis the DEA agent or the task force agent there, the Highway Patrol agent, who wants to go further? He has found a pretext, and that was that the listener did not use an indicator to make a lane change. That's what Sandra Bland did. She made a lane change without an indicator and was harassed unbelievably by an officer. All right, the listener didn't make a indicate a lane change. The officer says the officer that's his probable cause. So he does have probable cause to stop the listener. But what does the listener need to do then if he suspects it may be something slight and trivial like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Pretextual stops are valid. They can be following you, which they routinely do. Officers sit on the westbound lanes looking for money. They sit on the eastbound lanes looking for drugs. They believe, based on training that they have, that the people who are pulling through fit the description of somebody who is going to be traveling with drugs or traveling with money. And a lot of times they have tips that come down the line from state to state. But they get behind the driver because they believe, based on a hunch, that this person is doing something illegal, and they will find a reason. You've mentioned one, the lane change or the signal, the blinker. That law says you have to inhibit traffic in some way. There has to be somebody around you for you to worry about. But whether it's a speeding violation, a failure to maintain lane, that's what I often see, is where vehicles will cross over the fog line just a tad. Following too closely. You see this all the time with 18-wheelers that will pull in front of you in the slow lane, and immediately you're right behind them. There's nothing you can do, and the officer will perch and wait for that to happen. Window tint, license plate violations. They just passed a law in 2014 that says they can pull you over if you don't have a light shining over your license plate. So if they have a valid reason or a legal reason to stop you, once they stop you, in essence, they have a duty under several cases. One recently, U.S. v. Rodriguez, and here locally in Tennessee, it's State v. Troxel, that says the officer has to, they can stop you, and once they do it, their actions must take no longer than it takes to effectuate the purpose of the stop. They have to diligently pursue a means of investigation that's likely to confirm or dispel their suspicions. So
Okay,
they have to, if they're pulling you over for a lane violation, they've got to come up, get your license and registration. They have the right to come run your driver's license, and at that point, they need to be writing you a ticket. And when they come back, they need to be handing you the ticket, and they need to be sending you on your way. When they start deviating from that routine is when the law is there to protect you. And so a driver who has been pulled over, one of your listeners, as long as they're complying by giving their information, providing their name, sometimes they'll ask where you're going. You don't have to answer them, but if you can tell them, that's fine too. But at that point in time, when they return from the vehicle with that ticket and they give that ticket to you, they have to let you go. Anything beyond that, the court has said, is overstepping their bounds.
So the listener needs to know that if the pretext is an infraction of the road, then that's the limit of the stop, and he has no obligation to answer any questions, to talk about anything else, the weather. And the officer might, let me ask you this, Joey Fuson, Nashville attorney, might the officer try to provoke my listener in some way to get into a conversation, maybe even a heated one, that might generate probable cause for other reasons than the pretext?
Oh, absolutely.
What happens?
I mean, I see it all the time because most of these guys have videos on their cars now, so we get to see this happen. They'll pull them out of the car, which unfortunately they have the right to do for safety purposes, so they can pull them out. I've had people refuse to get out, which is fine. A lot of times the officers will allow them to stay in their vehicle. But yes, they'll pull them out of the car. Hey, man, how you doing? What's going on? Where are you guys headed? And what they're doing is two things. One, they're trying to elicit, like you said, information that could give them probable cause, maybe inconsistencies between the driver and the passenger. Routinely, they will separate the two and have one officer go to the passenger and one go to the driver. And then we'll meet up to try to confirm or dispel whether or not that information they were providing is accurate, which I would argue has nothing to do with writing a citation for a traffic infraction. But as far as you having to do anything else, you don't have to answer any questions related to anything but your driving. And I would absolutely, you would hope that people, especially listening to your radio station and your radio show, would know they don't have to do that. They don't have to engage in that. And what the second thing they're doing is they're trying to buy time. For a long time, there's been case laws that support this 15-minute rule, which basically says they have about 15 minutes because that's about how long it takes to write a ticket. And so if they don't have a canine there, they will routinely try to engage in that delay tactic to get the canine there. Because once the canine gets there, they'll run it around the car. And the Supreme Court has said, to my dismay, and maybe soon to change, that a drug canine sweep of your vehicle is not a search that would invoke the Fourth Amendment.
If the attorney, not the attorney, but if the law enforcement officer really has strong suspicions about my listener, he can have that. He can delay the listener's departure and maybe have a conversation with the listener of some kind, maybe even friendly, but maybe belligerent, one or the other. And then when the canine comes, he can, Joey Fuson, Nashville attorney, he can make that dog strike. He can make that dog respond favorably by a cue. The canine officer can make the dog respond to a cue. Is that possible? Or does that happen?
Yes, and I think it's scary because I bet it happens far more than even lawyers like we realize. I mean, you just don't know. You got a dog, and the dog is there to seek out a toy or a prize of some sort, and you'll have officers that will get the dog riled up. Right? You're going to go look for your toy, boy, and we'll get him kind of riled up. And then the dog, you can see it. They're just so eager to just scratch anywhere they can because they want that toy or they want that treat. You've also got several different ways canine officers use their dogs. So sometimes it's hard to tell. There's not one standard method. Some dogs scratch. Some dogs sit. Some dogs will lean up against the car. And so you don't really know until you get into litigation or get into your case and you find out the training of the dog and what the dog was supposed to do.
Now,
and there's a lot of experts out there that you can retain as a defense attorney that help assist us in looking at the video and deciding whether that dog strike was valid or not.
Right quick, Joey Fuson of Nashville, give my listener your phone number. Give it twice so he may be
sure.
I'm
here in Nashville. It's 615-298-7272, and again it's 615-298-7272.
This is David Toulis. Our show is Nuganomics.com. We're in the middle of a chat with Joey Fuson, Nashville attorney, and the thing in view is criminal asset forfeiture and civil asset forfeiture. That's where you, my listener, are most likely to be stung by the good people in Nashville who have written this law decades ago as part of the erstwhile war on drugs. Joey, does Tennessee have any kind of grade as far as constitutional liberties in the rights of travel? How do we rate compared to other states?
Yeah, as bad as it gets. They gave us a D, and I think that it's justified. And I think that there's four reasons it's justified. One is that civil forfeiture exists without the necessity of any criminal charge. And so it's not considered they don't have due process. Secondly, the police department keeps 100% of the money. They keep 100%. Now, they don't use it and they don't put it in their pocket, but they get all those nice cars. So there's an incentive for these officers to do it. 3 is one you mentioned earlier, is the low standard of proof, the preponderance of the evidence, and having it be a very low standard of proof once it gets to them to prove it. And the 4th reason is that the burden shifts. It takes away our constitutional rights. It strips us of the liberties that exist for us.
Well, we're talking with Joey Fuson, Nashville attorney, and we're going to hear if we can hold him over the CBS News, of which we are the sponsors here in Chattanooga. We're going to hold him over and ask about a case or two that he is defending. Joey, your cases are primarily criminal asset forfeiture cases. Is that right?
That's right. Every once in a while, you'll get cases where there's no criminal charges brought, but the civil forfeiture laws exist when you have somebody charged with a drug offense and they take everything. They take the vehicle, and that, like I said earlier, that's happened. The summertime heat with the Bonnaroo, you get a lot of those, and a lot of times it happens with drug seizures.
Bonnaroo is a trap as far as asset forfeiture goes. We're going to hear a little bit more about what happens at Bonnaroo from Joey Fuson, who's an attorney in Nashville, talking with us about a very grievous offense against the right of property that exists in the appropriation of untrammeled travel, the liberty to travel without being harassed, robbed, beaten, thrown down, or stopped without a warrant or without probable cause. Something that happens a great deal in this free country, the country for which David Wyatt, the Marine, died, and for which he is now in the middle of the funeral service. This is David Toulis. I've got some myths.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
If you have the DTs, the shits, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
Mention Hot News Talk Radio and get 10% off. By the time the police get there, it may be too late. Arm yourself today. Protect you and your loved ones with a pistol, shotgun, or rifle. At Sportsman Supply and Services in Hickson, they offer a huge selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. In business for over 26 years, Sportsman Supply and Services features an indoor shooting range, carry permit, and handgun safety courses. You know, in Tennessee, you can carry a handgun in your vehicle with no permit. Go to Sportsman Supply and Services today. Sportsman Supply and Services in Hickson, where owner Carl, who's a former owner of Mott Lake Shooting Center, will guide you in deciding on the perfect gun. Looking for ammo, high-capacity magazines, hunting rifles, and accessories? Sportsman Supply and Services in Hickson has it. If you want to save money and ammo, then add laser training as part of your shooting experience. Sportsman Supply and Services in Hickson. Their mission is to provide customers with the best firearms equipment, instruction, service, and indoor shooting experience. Sportsman Supply and Services, 4824 Hickson Pike, next to the Holiday Inn Express. Call 875-4868. That's 875-4868.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300-plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brandon Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
All systems go.
Got a printing project on deadline? Advantage Printing in Brainerd offers the highest quality one-stop service in Chattanooga. Graphic design, printing, addressing. Don't create a mailer unless you first check with Alan about the latest postal hassle. He'll handle the whole thing for you. Advantage Printing. Your advantage is in our name. 4031 Brainerd Road next to the Bilo. Print digital or offset, wide format, engineering drawings, start to finish, Advantage Printing. Check the details with Alan. 629-1800. That's 629-1800.
All systems go. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. News Talk 1240.
Covering funeral and burial of Sergeant David Wyatt, who was gunned down in cold blood last Thursday here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We have listeners not only in Chattanooga, but the entire United States and the entire world. And the world has to know that we as Americans in times like this are not divided. We as Americans, when an American soldier is slaughtered anywhere, come together in unity. We as Americans will not tolerate our Marines being shot in cold blood and being slaughtered like dogs. This community has come out like no other that I have seen. 500 plus Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, almost 2,000 motorcycles, hundreds of cars
You
lined
give
the
us
roadway.
12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Deborah Rodriguez. Police are trying to figure out the motive behind last night's shooting at a movie theater in Louisiana that left 3 people dead, including the gunman.
Police are painting the picture of a 59-year-old man from rural Alabama who had lost his way, a drifter, as they call him, who decided to stop in Lafayette, Louisiana, and get a motel room. They say that after staying there for several days, that's when he went to the movie theater, and 20 minutes into the comedy train wreck opened fire, killing 2 and wounding 9 more. Colonel Mike Edmonton with Louisiana State Police says there's a whole lot showing up on the internet that may lead to a motive, but he warns.
I'm armed to tell you all this. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true.
He promises a thorough investigation to figure out the motive in this case. Dave Cohen for CBS News, New Orleans.
Court documents show John Hauser made violent threats to try to stop his daughter's wedding in 2008 and vowed to continue his behavior when he got out of the hospital after his wife had him committed against his will. In a campaign appearance she's making right now in New York City, Hillary Clinton says she has nothing to hide when it comes to how she handled classified material on her private email server.
We are all accountable to the American people to get the facts right. And I will do my part.
Federal investigators are asking the Justice Department to check out the possibility the information was not handled appropriately. CBS News political director John Dickerson.
This reignites all those questions about trust. And those are ones Hillary Clinton doesn't want to have asked of her.
Former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer with a tweet intended for Donald Trump. Don't say anything foolish today, and news will be about a possible investigation of Hillary. Don't mess this up. When there's no other way to get there and you have to go, you'll probably pay the price.
Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox says the government's opened a price gouging investigation involving 5 airlines that allegedly raised prices in the Northeast after a deadly Amtrak crash back in May disrupted rail service. CBS News travel editor Peter Greenberg says this won't be easy for the government.
It's a tough case for either the DOT or the Justice Department to prove, because you have to say that the airlines were either in collusion with each other, they signaled each other, or they made the decision just to raise prices as a direct result of that tragedy.
The Transportation Department has sent letters to Delta, American, United, Southwest, and JetBlue seeking information. Sam Litzinger, CBS News, Washington.
Wheels down for Air Force One in Kenya. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett traveling with the president.
President Obama and the entire U.S. entourage have landed here in Nairobi, Kenya. The president is here on a state visit. It is a very big deal in Kenya. There are lots of issues on which the United States and the Kenyan government agree. One of them is counterterrorism. The other one is development throughout Africa. But there are issues in which they are likely to clash. Among them, the progress of human rights, democracy here in Kenya, and the Kenyan leadership's very staunch opposition to gay rights.
Dow down 135. This is CBS News.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? There's a tremendous price war among the major term life companies. Rates have dropped dramatically in the past few years. For example, a man age 45 non-tobacco user, $1 million of coverage, $75 per month level rate for the next 10 years. Or a man age 50 non-tobacco can obtain $500,000 of coverage for a monthly premium of only $110 per month, guaranteed not to change for the next 20 years. That's right, level rate guaranteed not to change for the next 20 years. If you're a smoker, we have great rates available for you as well. At Term Busters, we specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. If you're looking for new or replacement term life insurance, call today for a quote at 1-800-569-5440. That's 1-800-569-5440. You're probably paying more than you should. Call Term Busters, 1-800-569-5440, or visit our website at termbusters.net. Remember, 1-800-569-5440. Rates and availability may vary by state. Sample rate quotes based on preferred non-tobacco underwriting. Exam required to qualify.
A vicar in England apparently didn't get the message about thou shalt not steal. Now he's missing.
A Church of England vicar is on the run after ripping off nearly $40,000 in wedding and funeral fees. He also stole money families paid to have headstones erected in the churchyard. He had checks made out in his name, and he kept the money. Vicar Simon Reynolds left his trial at lunchtime and never returned. He was convicted in his absence. His bishop urges him to return and face his congregation. Police say the fugitive vicar may have fled to Europe, and Interpol is on the case. This is one cleric police really want to collar. Larry Miller, CBS News, London.
Sold at auction online.
I need somebody.
The black wool double-breasted suit jacket Ringo Starr wore in the Beatles movie Help in 1965. RR Auction says a top rock and roll collector in Rhode Island paid more than $46,500 for it. Deborah Rodriguez, CBS News.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. We've got some details on the funeral for Marine Staff Sergeant David Wyatt. Old Hickson Pike between Gadd Road to Wilbanks is going to be closed from approximately 1 to 4 p.m., and detours are going to be posted. Highway 153 southbound between Hickson Pike and Amnicola is also going to be closed from 2:45 p.m., and that's until the procession passes, which is going to take about 30 to 40 minutes. South Holtzclaw Avenue between Bailey Avenue and East 13th Street is also going to be closed from 1 o'clock to 5 p.m. Detours are going to be posted. Now for the funeral, it's going to be taking place at Hickson United Methodist Church. Parking is going to be at some of the baseball fields off of Gadd Road, and Hickson United Methodist Church doors are going to be opening at about 11:30 a.m. for service attendees. Old Hickson Pike from Gadd Road to Wilbanks is going to be closed from 1 to 4. And again, there will be detours. Leaving Hickson United Methodist Church is going to be the same as the way you came in. And the funeral procession is going to be at about 2:45 p.m., and it's expected to last about 30 minutes. From the church, it's going to be following Old Hickson Pike to Austin Road, over to Hickson Pike, South Highway 153, to Amnicola, to Wilcox, to Holtzclaw, and then to the National Cemetery. And Highway 153 South is going to be closed from about 2:45 p.m. until that procession passes, and the public should expect delays. If you're not part of the funeral procession or the family, the public must use the shuttle service from Engel Stadium. CART is going to be providing that. It's free from Engel Stadium to the National Cemetery starting at about 1 p.m. and Holtzclaw from Bailey Avenue to 13th Street, and detours are going to be posted. More details tonight at 5 here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and Hot News Talk Radio live at 5.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Toulis.
AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Hamilton County. Do thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. We are here live in our studio. We are a Saudi Daisy station, our tower pulsing regulated signal out of Saudi Daisy, and our studio in Hickson, Hot News Talk Radio, online at hotnewstalkradio.com. And on your smartphone, at the TuneIn Radio app. It's free. You just type in our station name, Hot News Talk Radio, and there we are. We are talking about a very important issue that is a liberty issue. And as we are speaking, the funeral service here in Chattanooga at Hickson United Methodist Church is not quite winding up. There's several more people who are going to be going to the microphone, and the event is set to end at 2:45. After which there will be the beginning of a very long procession through Chattanooga and to the National Cemetery, where this late staff sergeant who was killed a week and a day ago will be interred with great pomp, ceremony, and honors. He's called a hero. He was shot down by a Muslim who was said not to have been radicalized, but who was, as I like to understand it, pursuing faithfully his calling of his religious creed. Now, the topic at hand is civil asset forfeiture, and it's important that we think about it today, even as people are tuning in. You, my listener, I do thank you for joining us for a few minutes, tuning in as they trace their way through town to the burial for the Marine, excuse me. He's not a soldier, he's a Marine. And civil asset forfeiture is something that we have to ask the following about. Is it a part of the rule of law for which David Wyatt, the Marine, died? I would like to think that it's not. I would like to think that, if anything, civil asset forfeiture and even criminal asset forfeiture in some versions of it are blots and blights upon the face of the United States, the face of America. On the phone, I have with me a Nashville attorney. His name is Joey Fuson. He's a married man. He has 2 children, got his law degree at UT in Knoxville, and has been practicing 9 years. He's 37 and has had many cases already dealing with what effectively is police and highway patrolmen and sheriff's deputies' theft of your goods on the highway, a form of theft which is licensed back in the 1980s when Tennessee wrote the civil asset forfeiture statute as part of the heady war on drugs, which of course has brought disaster upon us, and it has brought our prison population in Tennessee, in the United States, to be the world leading imprisoning nation. Our governments imprison more people than any other government on earth. Even despotisms in darkest Africa don't do quite as well as we do, putting people into prison. Now, civil asset forfeiture, which Joey Fuson excels in, doesn't put anybody into prison. But Joey Fuson, what happens in a civil asset forfeiture case that involves my listener? What in a nutshell happens to him in this sort of bleak legal experience?
Yeah, it's expensive. I mean, it's all about the money to them, and it costs your listener, my clients, a lot of money. It does, and I tell you, because the first thing you have to do, as we explained earlier, is you're on the offensive. You've got to file documents. The burden's on you to come forward and show that the property that they've seized is legitimate and yours, that you purchased it, that it's your property. You've got to come forward and explain why you're carrying $15,000 of cash to go buy a truck. And it's a headache, because first and foremost, you're out your property while this is going on. If they're taking your vehicle and you've got a loan on that vehicle, you're still having to pay for that loan. You don't get any reprieve from the finance company. If that's your cash, you're going down to buy a piece of farm equipment down in Arkansas. Guess what? You're going to be out that money, and therefore out that farm equipment. So it's expensive first and foremost. Even if you're not charged with a crime. Obviously, if there's a crime that's being charged as part of this, even though the civil asset forfeiture happens outside the criminal court, even if there's a crime charged with it, it's still a separate and a headache, and it can be very costly.
And my listener's prosecution of his assets, trying to get his assets back, happens in administrative law. He never gets to court. It's all done in agency. In our case here in Tennessee, in the Department of Safety and Homeland Security.
Yeah, that's right. It goes to the Department of Safety first, where you have your standing hearing, and then if after that the burden shifts to them, they have to show that there's some preponderance of evidence, some reason why they should keep your property under the law. And if you aren't happy with that, after we go through that process and we are unsuccessful in getting the property back, which again doesn't happen too often, but when it does happen, you have the right to appeal, and then it goes up to the Chancery Court. And then you do have the right to have a judge, not an administrative law judge, but an elected judge here in Davidson County or whatever county you're in, hear the case.
So my listener has to go to Nashville to Chancery, because all cases appealed out of state agencies are heard in Nashville. My listener has to go to Nashville, either handling the case by himself or engaging an attorney such as you, Joey Fuson. And let me ask you this: can there be any finding of fact by a jury, or are the facts already in concrete at that point?
That's right. I believe it would be a chancery court. It would be a judge to decide whether or not ultimately the property was being used for some illegal means or was unlawfully obtained or being used in the commission of a crime in some way.
Well, can any new evidence be brought into the matter at that point, or is the record sealed and fixed by the hearing, by the trial, if you will, in agency, in administrative law?
Yeah, well, there's two types of appeals. One, you can actually appeal the administrative agency within there based on their policies and procedures. And then after that, when you go to Chancery Court, you're going to be able to, at that point, provide evidence.
But there's no trial de novo. There's no new trial on your claims and the facts involved in your case. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. Unlike where if you had a general sessions case, you can have a de novo appeal. That's correct.
That deprives my listener of his constitutional rights to a trial by jury to find the facts, and I would say also the law. Right, all the facts are unearthed and have to be put on display in the agency. In other words, in the administrative realm, and he can't, when he appeals, he can't offer any new facts or any new data. It's all sealed. He can't fortify his case. You're saying.
Well, and if you want to go even more principled than that, he shouldn't have to. He shouldn't have to prove anything, and that's what really is why it's so disfavored among the nation when they look at Tennessee, is the fact that the burden's on us to do anything, and that's what is really frustrating. That you are basically guilty until you prove innocence.
Well, let me ask you about the exotic dancer, the exotic dancer who lost more than a few $1,000s. Joey Fuson, what's the story?
Yeah, this got a lot of national news back in the summer a couple of years ago, where you had a California exotic dancer that had over $1 million in cash seized from her by a Nebraska state trooper, and it got a lot of publicity, obviously, because it was more than a couple $1,000s. And she actually came forward. She fought the good fight. She hired an attorney. She provided proof, I don't know how, of that her money was legitimate. Tax returns showed her consistent tips and as an exotic dancer, and she actually came forward and put on the proof you're talking about, and was able to actually get her money back.
Was she able to recoup costs, lawyer costs, and so on?
I don't know, but I doubt it. Because in the United States, we have what's called the American rule, and in general, you pay for your own attorney. Now, whether she had some type of claim against some agency under a 1983 case, don't know, where you could possibly recover that, but I bet she was just happy to get her $1 million back.
Well, we want to hear about a Tennessee case, Joey Fuson. You mentioned that there's a story about a Tennessee insurance agent who met with disaster on our state highways. What happened?
That's right, yeah. And that was contained, and I wrote that on our blog on Freeman and Fuson, freemanfuson.com. You had a professional insurance adjuster who had $22,000, and that's probably more typical of somebody driving around with some cash, isn't it? $20,000, because that's, if you're going to buy any car for cash, that's a pretty typical number. But they suspected him. The Tennessee trooper suspected him, the insurance agent, as being a drug courier, and the basis for that typically is them running the canine over the money, and the canine hitting on the scent of the money.
But Joey,
well, the problem with that is that all money smells the same. There's no, you don't get a choice when you go to the bank of good scented money or bad scented money. So the idea that just the smell of the money would indicate drug courier or being around drugs is preposterous. But that was the basis. He wasn't charged with a crime. They seized the money. And fortunately, after he retained an attorney and went to court, he was able to retrieve his cash. But the interesting part about that story, the only way he retrieved it, part of the deal was he had to sign a waiver not to sue the state. So they made sure he couldn't come after them under 1983 or some other type of claim.
Well, the good people and their rule of law, I guess that's something we just have to be very grateful for, right, Joey Fuson?
That's right. That's right. Sometimes the law is there to protect you, even though these laws seem to want to hurt you.
Well, now my listener's daughter who's 19 years old, in this last manifestation did not go to the Riverbend Festival, but instead went to Bonnaroo. And my listener's daughter came back unscathed, having had no encounters with the law. But other Bonnaroo goers have had very bad dealings with the civil magistrate. What happens up there?
Yeah, Bonnaroo is unique not only for Manchester and Coffee County, but for the surrounding counties that actually do patrol on the interstates. You have certain counties like you have Cookeville there, you have Cumberland County or Crossville. I guess that's Putnam County. You've got several counties that actually have interstate use, so it becomes a big money grab for several agencies. But yeah, your listener's daughter was fortunate because most people do have some type of interaction with them, whether it's at the gates or on the interstate. But it's your typical civil asset forfeiture, drug interdiction. It's just a bonanza there. And what they do is they will pull people over for driving. We talked about it earlier, the various different reasons they pull them over, and they'll find minor amounts of marijuana. And sometimes, even with minor amounts of marijuana, paraphernalia, different things, they will go forward and actually seize vehicles. I've got actually 2 cases right now. One, I've got a gentleman who was camping out in a Walmart parking lot prior to the event, which Walmart allows them to do, and he was found to have a very minor amount of marijuana on him, and they seized his vehicle. Now, that's not your typical.
What kind of vehicle was it?
Do what now?
What kind of vehicle was it?
I don't know exactly. It wasn't a cheap vehicle. It was a fairly nice vehicle. It was a sedan or something, and they seized the vehicle. And typically for misdemeanor offenses, and the law says you're not supposed to seize vehicles because you can't be charged with. The vehicle can't be charged in conjunction with a simple possession scenario, but they're still doing it. And what they've done is they seized his vehicle, and now he is having to come back from ways away, up north, to come back and fight to get his vehicle back when he was doing nothing other than preparing to go to a show and smoke some marijuana he brought down, very small amount. And now he's going through this whole civil asset forfeiture, and we're going to fight to get his vehicle back, and we will be successful. We'll get his vehicle back. It'll just cost him some money.
We're talking with Joey Fuson, who's a Nashville attorney who has quite a few cases that are an attempt to remedy the blight of civil asset forfeiture that the Tennessee General Assembly, perhaps even our representatives and senators here in Chattanooga, have voted on or did vote on in sessions much earlier. This is a law that's at least 2 decades old, has been grinding away against travelers on the interstates of our state. Well, Joey, you mentioned that there are at Bonnaroo often pretextual stops. What is a pretextual stop, and what is the limit of an interaction between my listener and the police officer who has only that slight thing as a probable cause for which to stop the listener? What is a pretextual stop?
Sure. A pretextual stop is them getting behind you or coming to identify you without you violating the law. Things like driving with a Colorado license plate. Guys with, you can go through the stereotypes of somebody who may possess drugs or may be a drug courier. And frankly, there's in my mind, because I do this and I've done it for a long time, there are no stereotypes. But they use and they're trained to, usually I say driving while Colorado, driving with out-of-state tags with a couple guys in the front seat are almost always going to have those black tinted windows, SUVs on the side of the road pull out behind them. And what they will do, and it happens, I've seen it on video, I've heard stories, and even Policing for Profit, when Channel 5 did their investigation, they had helicopters flying over the interstate watching them do this. They'll actually come up on the vehicle and try to create, if you will, probable cause by making you swerve or slow down or change lanes without a blinker or get too close to the car in front of you. But once you do it, and that's back to the pretextual stop, they can have pretext, but if you violate the law in their eyes, then they can stop you. And sometimes it doesn't take a violation of the law. Sometimes they'll stop you anyway.
Well, what happens if a trailer truck pulls in front of you very closely, as they sometimes do? What is that? Is that a possible pretextual cause to stop you?
Yeah, again, pretextuals are allowed. Pretextual stops allowed. What that would be a question of is whether, in fact, that's a violation of the law. And I would argue it's not, as long as you take the steps to back off the vehicle. And that's where you would get into your motion to suppress that you would file as an attorney. When I get hired to defend people who have been stopped for these very loose or very shaky reasons, that's where we have our remedies in a motion to suppress. And what we'd say is that the stop, no matter what happens after the stop, it doesn't matter. The stop itself was illegal.
And that's because
you never found a legal basis to stop them. And there's been a lot of cases that have to do with swerving within your lane. Steve McNair, the Tennessee quarterback, if you remember back in several years ago, that was the case that helped him get off his DUI. They pulled him over for swerving within his lane. Well, that usually the cases we see with that are on the interstate, with drug interdiction officers in their SUVs following somebody saying they crossed over the line a little bit. Now, and I think that the next part of your question, if I recall, is what can they do? Follow the traffic laws. You know, have proper vehicle, have a proper vehicle registration. Have your equipment on. Make sure that if you're driving a rental car or somebody else's car, you've got proof of ownership. You know, basically try to follow these rules that they're using to try to stop people.
And when you're stopped, when my listener is stopped, Joey Fuson, Nashville attorney, he does not have to answer questions. If it is perhaps you change lanes without giving an indicator light, the listener should be bold enough to say, well, just write me a ticket and leave it at that. Because what the pretextual stop is there's a legal cause for stopping the car and the driver in it, but the officer wants more. He wants a conversation.
That's right.
So that he can wiggle his way to find probable cause for a greater delay of that traveler.
That's exactly right. The pretextual is, I want to stop you. I think you're doing wrong, and I'm going to find a reason. And that we just talked about, if they find that reason, there's obviously defenses you can make in court. But yes, once they stop you for whatever reason they give you, I say, and I've said before, be respectful but firm. And I think your listeners probably know what that means. You provide the information. You provide your license. You keep, when they leave to go back with your information in the car, no moving around, no reaching across, no turning around and looking suspicious. Just keep your head in front of you, 10 and 2, and just wait for the officer to return. And when they do, I tell people, ask them when they come to the car, why'd you stop me? What did I do wrong? Sometimes they won't even tell you. They'll come up and start asking you where you're going and whether you have drugs in the car. And a lot of times, being firm and saying, why are you stopping me? Well, you didn't use a signal. Okay, great. Well, I'll be glad to take my ticket and go on my way. Well, no, sir, I want to ask you some questions.
All right, what happens there?
No, I'm not interested in answering your questions. I'll gladly take my ticket and I'll go about my way.
So that there, you want the ticket so you can go, right? What you don't want is them delaying giving you the ticket for the minor infraction, which is no real threat to you, and dealing with long interrogation.
That's right. And some people just start talking. I say, don't be chatty. This isn't a time to make a friend, and most people don't want to, but the longer you talk without the officer asking you questions, the more time you're giving him to allow backups to get there, canines to get there, and for this to be a lot more inconvenient than it already has been. And even more so when they start asking you questions and want to find out where you've been, what you're doing, what's your passenger, why is the girl in the back seat asleep, what's going on. I think that you have to be firm and say, I'm not interested in answering your questions. I'll take my ticket and I'll go about my way. And that's when it gets to what you see, what you've seen in the last couple of years is, am I free to leave? Can I go now? Is our stop over? Have you done the investigation on my lane change? Can I go now?
Do you ask do you tell people you speak to Joey Fuson, Nashville attorney, that they should record all stops either visually or by digital recorder device?
Boy, it'd be better. I think you see now with technology, it's a lot easier to simply lean over and hit your record button. But you don't want to do that in a way that would cause suspicion, because nothing we've talked about today involves a situation where an officer witnesses something that is suspicious, where they actually have somebody trying to stuff something, or things that could be construed as trying to grab a gun or hide something, because then they can investigate a little further. It's like a hurdle race. Right? They've got to knock over the first hurdle, which is you violating a traffic violation. Then they've got to knock over the next hurdle, which is finding some probable cause to further investigate, right? And they've got to keep jumping over these hurdles at every stage. And if you don't let them, if you stop and say, no, then if they jump over it, you've got a legal basis to defend yourself. You can let the law work for you at that point.
Joey Fuson, let my listener hear your phone number again in case he has a question for you.
Sure, 615-298-7272. And that's 615-298-7272.
Joey Fuson, thanks for chatting with my listener and me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, David.
Joey Fuson is an attorney in Nashville, and we've been talking about civil asset forfeitures, the blight on the American face. And David Wyatt did not die for that.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
We've got a table here at Delia's and Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's and Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network. Coverage continues Sunday here at Live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
News Talk 1240. When my brother and I opened our first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. President Obama has landed in Nairobi amid tight security.
The president plans to visit relatives. His father is from Kenya, but the official purpose of his visit is to address human rights issues, corruption, and security. Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab and ISIS-affiliated Boko Haram have launched attacks in the region.
Fox Radio's Jessica Gallagher in Nairobi. The Louisiana theater gunman, we're learning, was armed with a semi-automatic .40 caliber handgun.
We know he had at least one additional magazine, which he dropped in the lobby. He reinserted, reloaded, and returned back into the theater, at which point we think he fired one additional round. Was into himself.
Chief Jim Kraft, 2 women have died.
David Toulis here. Thanks for joining us for Nuganomics.com, the show that covers local economy and the free market. In God's providence, I'll be moving our program to the morning hour at 9 o'clock. It'll still be the same material, the same man with the florid and sometimes crinkly bow tie, and the diverse interest here of people and things and situations here in Chattanooga. The story today, of course, is the funeral of fallen Marine David Wyatt, the former staff sergeant. It began at 1, and in about 15 minutes, the service, the funeral service, which no doubt has a great deal of Christian interest, an interest in the providence of God, God's mercy, and the forgiveness of sins through the Lord Jesus Christ will be ending, and that's scheduled to be at 2:45. And excuse me, we are a commercial radio station, 1240 AM, Hot News Talk Radio, and we're brought to you by Ducks, the indoor air professionals that help get the mold and mildew out of your duct work, and find the lost junk in your under your vents. And no, the crew there from Mark Thompson will not be returning to your 4-year-old his Schmeisser and his AK rifles, the little aftermarket Lego pieces that fell down there. They're not going to be returned. Sorry. But you can call Ducks, the indoor professionals, at 876-9907, 876-9907. And I want you to have lunch. And I want you to have lunch or dinner. It's getting a bit late in the afternoon at Delia's, the great little Mexican restaurant in South Saudi Daisy. Maria Hernandez offers just a rich selection. Nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, and many other delights from south of the border. And today is Friday. The special is the taco salad. It's number 19 on the menu. Chicken or beef, it's $1 off. And mention our station and get some iced tea at no charge. We have here on the mic Russell, our news director. Russell, give us an update, please, on the day of mourning in Chattanooga.
Well, right now the traffic is quite heavy all around the city, not just on the roads which are going to be closed, but keep in mind that 153 southbound is going to be closed at 2:45, which is coming up in just a few minutes now. It's 2:34 here at the moment, but it's going to be closed for about 30 to 40 minutes at 2:45 p.m. and the public should be expecting delays as traffic is going to be stopped at pass points along that procession route as well. And keep in mind too, even though the road won't officially be closed, there's going to be heavy traffic afterwards just because of backing up. That's just how it is when traffic gets stopped. South Holtzclaw Avenue between Bailey Avenue and East 13th Street is also going to be closed from 1 to 5 p.m. and detours are going to be posted. And so that's your update on the traffic from us here at Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. Thanks, David.
Russell is our news director. He is the young man who never set foot in a classroom, and he is wearing his shoes today. There are some Converse sneakers here in the studio, but we run a very tight ship. I want you to know, even though only some of us wear bow ties and jackets, and that's me, and that's just because I'm on radio and I need to look nice for you, my listener. But we do have there is another person who joins us, and he does that by his smartphone, and he does that by getting the TuneIn Radio app and typing in Hot News Talk Radio. That's us, and there we are. And I do appreciate him, joining us here on this day where there is a lawless edict that has been passed by the mayor of Chattanooga, Andy Burke, an edict that goes under the very august name of Mayoral Directive number 2015-01, I guess referring to the year, and that this is his first police action as the chief executive and the man at the helm of city government. He is the man who makes things happen, right? As the mayor, he executes things. That's what the executive does. He executes things. He makes things occur that are part of the law, the body of law that he rides upon, that law being passed by the city council. Of course, there's another law wave that undergirds that, and that's the state law, Tennessee Code Annotated, which has superiority in every way over town ordinance or mayoral diktat, if you will. Now, if you go to Chattanoogan.com, Chattanoogan, the noted local news website run by John Wilson, go to the opinion section, and if you have a moment, read my analysis of the assault today by Mayor Burke on our constitutional right of dissent. Now, that is a constitutional right to have an opinion, to be able to utter your opinion, even if it's not popular. Now, I say that with some warmth because on a couple of points, I think I offer what I would be fair to call a minority perspective, a minority view. But the mayor, in his directive, which is there protecting today, is protecting the people who are going to be traveling in the funeral procession of David Wyatt and arriving at the National Cemetery. It is protecting them from what? Well, from people such as, at the brightest, loudest end of the spectrum would be Westboro Baptist Church. And there's been, a couple days ago, the foundation of a Facebook page with 400 likes already, at that point. The goal is to suppress the dissenting arguments of the anti-gay, anti-military, anti-intervention, pro-God argument made by these Christian people out of Topeka, Kansas, and we have reports that they are expected here. They often arrive at military funerals saying things that God hates fags and soldiers. God is glad that these soldiers were killed because the country is under judgment for its great admiration of sodomy and buggery and the like, also called gay rights. We have gay marriage. Of course, the gay theory is at its highest point. Gay shares are at a peak. Well, actually, gay shares peaked last summer. And even though there's been Obergefell in the favor of the Poofter theory, shares are drifting, you could say, and there will be some downward jolts in their value in the marketplace. We just have to wait for that. But the mayor is, as he says, defending mourners. He is protecting mourners, and he rides his directive rides upon the back of an unconstitutional federal law written against the Westboro Baptist Church, and that is the Respect for America's Fallen Heroes Act, and a state statute which the mayor cites in his order, two-page document. That's Tennessee Code 3917-317, where persons are prohibited from interfering with funeral or burial, funeral home viewing, funeral processions, as he says in a summary, or of any funeral or memorial service for a deceased person. In other words, you can't protest someone's funeral in Tennessee. There's no way of making a dissent. Well, what if a mass murderer had a funeral? Could he be opposed? Could someone have a placard saying, "We demand civil asset forfeiture from the estate of this lousy but now deceased attacker of innocent life"? And the standard, the reason I don't say cavalierly that the mayor's edict is unconstitutional. I say it having thought a little bit about this question and looking at the standard. His standard is that the eruption of protest shall be deemed, quote, offensive to the sensibilities of an ordinary person in the state. Again, let me say it again: deemed offensive to the sensibilities of an ordinary person in this state. And so he authorizes in an ungrammatical paragraph, is paragraph 2, which has a grammatical mistake in it. He directs all City of Chattanooga law enforcement personnel to treat the Lee Highway and Amnicola sites as he calls them protected memorial services. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Which will shield them from any protest. So the American public, the Chattanooga Hamilton County public, are people so vulnerable, so weak, that they have to be shielded and they have to be defended and protected by his order. Well, this is a kind of administrative condom placed over you, my listener. Now, you, my listener, I know are very sympathetic to American soldiers. You're sympathetic to American interventionism. You like the fact that we have a great empire. And here we have a faithful Muslim martyr killing our soldiers and being shot down by Chattanooga Police Department M4 carbines in a very dramatic gunfight a week and a day ago. Muhammad Abdulaziz is dead. He is he's a regular Muslim, and the indications from the FBI's Ed Reinhold are that he was not radicalized. So that means that if he's not radicalized, somehow he's a regular, non-radicalized, routine, humdrum Muslim, a Mohammedan, a Moor, if you will, to use the language out of Shakespeare. I'm thinking of the killer of Desdemona, the beautiful general's wife, the beautiful wife of the general, I should say. And well, the right of protest is being sheathed, right? We have to put a police prophylactic on the public body, the public, the tumescence of the public. They have to be protected from grit, sand, and disease, which are not just the Westboro Baptist protesters who invited themselves into our city, but it could be all kinds of other people as well. Think for a second about the man whom I saw today in a black pickup truck, who made a right turn just in front of me as I was heading into the studio today on Highway 153, which is going to be closing here in a couple of minutes. And he flew behind his truck bed, the Confederate battle flag, right? The battle flag of the great nation of the South. What if that man had an ISIS symbol on his truck? Not very likely, being that he is the owner of a pickup truck. I think it was something like a Ford Ranger. What if a man holds a placard along the side of the road that says Allah Akbar? God is the greatest. What if someone tows after a car an upside down Yankee flag with its 50 pentacles and its red and white bars? What about that? Is that does that upset people? What about a man with the Confederate battle flag that's upside down? Well, you wouldn't really notice it was upside down, except that the stars would look like the Baphomet, which is the occultic symbol that is shared by both the Confederate banner and the federal banner. These are the occultic Baphomet symbols, but they're put upside down so they look like the stars that we know and the stars that we love, the same ones that you find on the sides of military planes. What if a man flew a flag of Saudi Arabia? What about the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, the yellow flag with the coiled snake in the middle? I read that President Obama doesn't like that flag and he would like it to be suppressed somehow. We just have to find a way. What about a poster where someone says, and has a small child hold up this poster that says, "God judges enemies"? Well, is that for David Wyatt, or is that against David Wyatt? God judges enemies. This isn't quite going as far. This isn't going quite as far as Westboro Baptist. But what about that man? What the problem is here is the following: it's left up to the officer's discretion. How does the officer know how to read things? How is he to make a snap judgment as to what the sensibilities of the American public or people in the state are? How does he do that? That's a sociological analysis that really is impossible to know that it offends the sensibilities of an ordinary person. How does he know that? How can an officer make that kind of a judgment call? What about a poster or a placard, something held up along the side of the street by a woman, right, and with a baby carriage behind her? Did Marines die in vain? What if she asked that question? That's a question. What if she is saying that we don't need to be, in her thinking, we don't need to be in the Middle East. We need to stop being an interventionist, imperialist, war-making, inflation-exporting, debt-riddled country. We need to mind our own business. That's what she's saying, okay? Did Marines die in vain? That's her question, and she wrote it in awkward black letters on a piece of white cardboard. Not very big, but certainly visible by the family members of David Wyatt, the wife, the widow that he leaves behind, and his children and others. The obituary is in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. I have it here on my desk. What about someone who says "end the occupation of the Mideast"? What about someone who says in a placard is a demonstration making a point? Stop supporting Israel. What if someone says that? Is that for or against David Wyatt? How is the officer who is enforcing this edict supposed to know? What happens here is that you have an intervention in the marketplace of ideas by force. Force is going to shut down someone, block off someone, throw to the ground a person who's dissenting from the day. He's dissenting from what everybody seems to be saying. He's not saying the same thing. He's not flying the American flag. He's not standing there with tears in his eyes. He's angry. He's angry about the country. He's angry about turban heads. Now that's another poster, and it says "Go Marines, kill turban heads." Okay, what about that? Is that disruptive? Well, clearly that's not disruptive, right? That would be something the officer would agree with, and he would let it pass. But what about the man a couple blocks down who says Allah Akbar? Now this man who holds that sign, he is a devout American. Yes, he's a Muslim. He is a Muslim, but he's a moderate Muslim. He's one who would never take up jihad. He can't see jihad ever coming here, so he's safe in his comfort zone. What about someone who says, "Join the KKK, defend America"? What about that? Is that for or against David Wyatt and his family? Well, Mayor Burke wants to defend the people. He wants to impose upon us a protective barrier. He doesn't want there to be an alternative narrative. And that's what protesters are. That's what they do. Haven't gays, whom Mayor Burke supports, haven't they often been very violent in their protests? Have they not often stormed churches and splattered paint on homes of Christians and activists? Have they not Have they not held up signs and picketed people who donate to pro-marriage causes? Have they not outed executives for supporting marriage in California? Can there not be an alternative argument? Did David Wyatt, did the other soldiers, did the other military men, Carson Holmquist, did Squire Wells, what about Sergeant Thomas Sullivan, and what about Randall Smith? Did these men die so that we would be insulated from alternative ideas? Cannot there be feedback on what everybody is saying? If everybody's saying the same thing, cannot there be one person, maybe two, maybe 100, maybe 200, who are not taking part in the great ecstasy of emotion, the great paroxysm of tears and sympathy and identification with the homeland? You know, the feeling that we have here in Chattanooga is with all the flying American flags, we have the idea of the nation whom we are willing to die for, the nation whom we love, the nation, I should say, that we love. But let me ask the question, is it the United States that we love, or is it America that we love? Now, that may be a specious distinction, but by making it, I'm trying to get at something that's perhaps important to thinking about today and to experiencing the sunshine out there at the National Burial Ground, and hearing the bands and seeing all the hoopla. And that is, are we somehow so vulnerable, so psychically weak that we can't deal with the burrs, that we can't deal with people who just don't agree with anything? They don't agree with America. They don't agree with the federal government. They don't like what's happening to the country. They don't like the fact that we don't have marriage anymore. They don't like the fact that the good people in Washington have destroyed the dollar. They have destroyed the economy. They have feather-bedded whole areas of the economy in the national defense sector, for example, where their friends and their fellow board members and their fellow investors and their fellow university graduates are ensconced, making millions, or trading in the Chicago Futures Exchange on the gyrations in paper money that affects all of us. You, my listener, you are beleaguered by paper money. You're beleaguered by it, and because we don't have constitutional coin and currency, we don't have a constitutional mayor's order. His first order of the year is blatantly outside the scope of the law. Again, why? Vagueness. It's vague. It's vague. It's vague. Don't we want to have a discourse? Don't we want to have, as people say, a democracy? We don't have a democracy, of course. We have a federal republic, but those who are behind the mayor's edict, who want to have a calm and respectful event, are ones who want the officer, who's the man in the street enforcing this rule, to categorize speech. They want him to dole out favor on one hand, but to suppress speech on the other. They want everything to be rational. They want everything to be controlled, and they like the idea of the censor. Is that what these men died for? Did they die for America, or did they die for the federal corporation? You know, if they died for America, then we should see Mayor Burke's little specious rule as against the spirit of the country, that is to say, of America. Now, it may be very much a part of the United States. Indeed, the United States, in its great decline of late, is very much in this direction, very much against open debate, very much against persecution of dissenters, very much hostile to those who do not share the party line. I have asked myself, how can I become a real person? How can I become a private person? What the mayor represents, what perhaps many people unwittingly represent as well in sharing in the day's proceedings, is the idea of the public person. We all have to be public people. We all have to share in public policy, in the vague ideals of the nation, which have turned much away from what the nation stood for at its founding. And we're no longer private people. We're no longer private persons. And I've thought a lot about this idea about how to become a private person. And I'd like to think that dissenters tend to be private persons. They tend to be kind of off the grid. They tend to have diverse opinions, even opinions opposed to mine. I'm not saying that these people who are potential protesters are in agreement with me, nor me with them. But what I like is that there's diversity. I want there to be diversity, and that's why Chattanooga has such hope and such prospect, because it is a city of diversity, and I think it's a city of mutual respect. And for that, we can say that indeed, David Wyatt died. He died for the liberty of the country, but liberty, and he died to uphold the Constitution. Okay, and yet here we have this edict, which is serving to protect those whose tears are wetted by the passing of his hearse. And the mom is telling the children, "Well, there goes a soldier who died for our freedoms, son." And there goes there's the family of the man who made the ultimate sacrifice by willingly laying down his life for his friends. One of the Marines apparently put himself in harm's way greatly to help others escape, and took the shot from the faithful Muslim non-radicalized shooter Mohammed Abdulaziz. How can we be private persons? This is a question I maybe shouldn't have brought it up. But I would like to think that we can possibly be natural and private persons and not just corporations. We need to see that the public spirit is very much about the corporate entity of America and the United States. Is there some way we can turn away from that? Is there some way we can be private persons again, not corporations, not, if you will, avatars, the kind of legal structure that everyone has as part of his existential makeup? It's a legal shadow that follows everybody around. And when you die, your avatar dies as well. David Wyatt served the federal government in his military, and he has gone to meet his maker. It happened a week ago and a day when he was killed, and his death is mourned by thousands and thousands of people. The roads in Chattanooga from Hickson to the National Cemetery are lined with people wanting to see what happened. They want to be part of something great. It's today. It's happening today. My name is David Toulis, and our show is Nuganomics.com. I'm moving to the morning slot, 9 o'clock, to give you an opening view of the day. Again, thanks for joining me. Now, I've got some things I want you to hear. Hang on.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. If you have the DTs, shit, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom